I'm just going to group present my people, and they can stay where they are, and then we'll come up here later. So Kevin Hart, who just ran out, you'll see him. he ran upstairs when I said come inside. He's the founder and CEO of a company called ZOA, and they are developing environmental sensors. He will show you the sensors today. He's got a particulate monitor that you can wear on your lapel as you walk around. Mine was supposed to be here by now. It is still in the mail somewhere. Casey Lindbergh, Esther's brought up a couple times. He is a postdoc with Esther, and he will discuss in more detail their analytical methodology that they're using. Mariana Hygieia, I can never pronounce her last name, so she'll tell you. She's she's the Light and Health Program Director and a professor of architecture at Rensselaer. I can never say that right either, Polytechnic Institute, and she'll talk about some of the things they're doing with circadian rhythm and light measurement. And then I'm Charlene Bear. I think all of you know who I am. If you don't, I'll tell you some other time. So that's who will be speaking today, and I'm going to start out by, let's see, I need to get this back to the first slide. I'm going to start out by just giving you kind of an overview of what we're doing in this session. And I'm a Mac person, so I don't do very well on Windows. So, you know, you have to take pity on me. I haven't touched a Windows computer in many years. So this is the way that today, as Judy said, that we're working. We're going to start about technology and methodologies in the beginning on how we're measuring metrics, and we're going to proceed through the day on how people that are applying them and how they're applying them to how others, based on what they see in policy and practice, so that we go through a logical progression. So this first session is about emerging metrics on measuring health. This is an area where I've worked quite a bit, but all the other speakers have worked more as far as specific technology. But what you need to understand is these emerging metrics, this is the wave of the future. This is how we're going to get to personalized medicine. This is how we're going to be able to determine what is correct for you and others in a building. We cannot continue to do things in the same way we were doing them. I've been doing indoor air research since the early 80s, back when people thought we were inventing science, including my husband, who had to go through an indoor air quality problem to think that I was actually doing something correctly. Those of you who may know, my husband's an industrial chemist. I'm an environmental chemist. You can understand what our lives are like. But I've been married 40 years, so we've survived. So the idea is we can't just keep doing what we're doing. And so we're on the new frontier. We're moving forward. And that's what we really want to discuss today. And remember, this is interactive. Each speaker has a presentation that's not too long, but we need to talk. We need to move forward because that's how we come up with these ideas. So as you've heard, stress monitoring is one of the big issues. I have a big proposal into someone who I hope will fund it soon. And one of their questions were, why are you using stress for monitoring? And I kind of went, okay, it's because what Esther and Judy are doing. And that's not necessarily the best answer, but it is something that we know how to measure. There's the heart rate variability that we discussed. I wear, only because this is the one I have, this one all the time. There's a variety of them out there. The cortisol measurements. You've got hair, saliva, and blood. Beta amylase. My partner in our research highly believes in beta amylase, which is also saliva. But these are all ways to measure stress as it goes along. Fitness tracking is important. The sports medicines, it becomes very important for fitness tracking. Angela Smith, who you'll hear later today, I can't remember, it was last year or the year before, she showed a slide that I showed everyone I possibly can on what happens if you do not do weight-bearing exercise to your bones. They get big holes in them. I mean, I thought that was the most frightening thing I've ever seen. Sleep quality is critical. You're going to hear about that quite a bit today. And that's where the stress comes in, and that's where the cortisol, and actually that's where I found out that hypothyroid people tend to have lower cortisol than normal people, and it screws up your sleep, which almost sounds backwards to me. But it's all where we need to understand this personalized individual responses. There are other physiological measurements that can be taken. We've known in sick building syndrome, dry eye was an issue for many years. There are methodologies to be able to measure this called mucus ferning. It's kind of creepy. You have to collect the tears in a capillary tube, and then you measure the dryness. There's lung peak flow, which if you all have ever been around an asthmatic, is very critical. When an asthmatic is in an asthma attack, or they are just close to an asthma attack, their peak flow level, how hard can you breathe out, that is damaged. There's nasal cavity changes. There you can actually do nasal peak flow, and this slide up here is a picture of a lady doing that. Skin and core temperature. You know, we all complain. I mean, it's always been the joke, you're either too hot or you're too cold, but it becomes very interesting on your core temperature, and there is something called the I button, which my partner, Powell Wagaki, is actually placing on people's temperature, on their temple, and he's being able to monitor core temperature. There's something called skin humidity with a corneometer that he is also doing. So that, you know, how damp are your hands, how dry is the air. All of that impacts your response to the building. Real-time monitoring, you're going to hear a lot about this today. This is probably the most quickly growing area that we have. Unfortunately, for many things, we still do not have the technology, the capability to be able to measure in the levels that we need, but it is growing hard and it is growing fast. These are just pictures of different VOC monitors that are out there. One of the things you need to know about VOCs is we still can't measure individual VOCs by an accurate measure in the levels that we have to do indoors. There are still too many VOCs for the technology. My major area is breath analysis. As you can see, we can do exposures with breath analysis. This becomes really important. What did you fill your tank up with gas today? I can measure your benzene levels right now. So all of those exposures are very, very important. We're using breath analysis for different things, including health measurements, but we measure differently if we're measuring exposures versus what we're measuring to measure things like, I actually just got funded to look at Parkinson's and then cancer and things like that from breath. But for exposures, it's very important. It's non-invasive, and the analysis is tough, but the collection is very easy. As I said, direct measurement, direct exposure. This was something that we did probably 10 years ago. It's actually an older version, but it's important to know there are a variety of pollutants out there. We actually put this on asthmatic children because we've done the pollutant of the decade since the 80s. It started out as the pollutant was formaldehyde, and then we moved to ozone, and then we moved to particles, and each one of these we said were the things that were causing the problems. The indoor environment is very complicated. At this moment, you're being exposed somewhere to 300 to 400 VOCs right now, not including the particulates or anything else that's in here. What's important? We don't know, and we can't do one compound at a time. We can't. Everything is synergistic. We do know that. So as we measure the different things, what impacts are there? An asthmatic can get into a dry environment and start coughing, and people can assume, you know, it could just be the dryness that's the issue. So we have to look at this in combination. We can't do single measurements. There's been a lot on performance productivity measures. This is the latest study back from Spangler that's been recently released, where Judy mentioned it with the great changes. They looked at what they called green score, which was a standard green building with standard control, and then an enhanced building where they actually raise the ventilation higher, lower the CO2 levels, and as you can see, just the difference between the green score and the enhanced green score is significant on information strategy. The green score is on information usage is 172% better than the standard non-green building. But when they enhanced it, it went up to 299%. This is significant economic response. This is where we have been told for years, we need to come up with an economic reason to do it. Here it is. People are the most expensive things in buildings. So this shows you how important it is to design these and to come up with this. Performance metrics are still, how to measure them is a very argumentative research area at the moment. We're still trying to understand it. Powell Rogacki, as I've said several times, he's a partner that I work with. He's just looked at changing classroom temperature. Interestingly enough, he found that by just lowering the classroom temperature by 2 degrees, you significantly increased student performance and work rate. So getting just a little bit too hot is a problem. We looked at a study where we just controlled the temperature, the humidity tightly to exactly 50%, and then we raised the temperature 2%, and we found not only did the productivity go up, but the energy usage went down 10%. So there are ways to make this work together. The assumption has always been if we control the indoor environment to the best, we're going to use more energy. And in certain cases that's true, but it is not always true. Post-occupancy questionnaires, I'm sure most of you are aware of those. These are something that have been used for a long time. This is Gail Brager's work at Berkeley. And yes, there are a lot of problems with questionnaires. We can discuss this ad infinitum today on why we don't like questionnaires or we do like questionnaires. But they are something that can be easily sent out to a broad number of people, and they aren't perfect, but you can get some interesting epidemiological responses quickly on a large number of people. So, as I said, emerging metrics and devices are the future. We have to connect the environment to behavior and health. That's the only way we're really going to end up with healthy environments. And now I'm going to move on to Casey, who's going to talk about how they're really measuring the environment. Thank you. Okay, I'll let you get him up there.